You are at war with yourself and likely don't realize it. Your thoughts, beliefs, habits, and actions often sabotage you. Are they helping you overcome adversity or setting you up for failure? To win this battle, you must connect with your inner warrior. We all have a warrior within us, one that strengthens our resolve and helps us to rise to meet life's challenges. If you're just surviving rather than thriving, then it's time to embrace the warrior archetype, live the warrior ethos, and ascend. If you are a veteran, first responder, or someone looking to take charge of your life, find your tribe, and then be the hero of your own story, this podcast is for you. Join Mike Kinney and Matt Hastings, two retired U.S. Army officers who served in U.S. Army Special Operations and Army Aviation units, as they share with you optimal performance practices they learned in their time with the Military and Warriors Ascent, a 501c3 nonprofit that helps veterans and warriors with PTS.
Well, all right, everyone. Welcome to the Warriors Ascent podcast with your hosts, Mike and Matt. And we've got a very, very special guest today. We've got the Warriors Ascent Operations Director, Christy Cook. So, we are super grateful and excited to have you here. So, when we talk about community and surrounding yourself with good people, I can think of none better than Christy. So let me just tee this up. So we've spoken in previous episodes, right, about intellectual standards, cognitive biases and distortions, and critical thinking, right? So sometimes I'll say the best hedge against those cognitive biases, whether those be your propensities to be, too data-driven, or maybe in some cases too emotional, or transactional versus relational, and things of that nature, right? Well, the best hedge against that is surrounding yourself with people, right, who offer different perspectives. Maybe they've got different personalities, or quite simply, maybe they just think differently, right? So we talked about alignment, and while having alignment, right, ideological, right, strategic, whatever is important, but surrounding yourself with yes men and women, right, will leave you susceptible to blind spots and limited and narrow thinking, right? So in order to counter that, I like to say you need the yin to your yang, and I give you Miss Christy Cook, the yin to my yang. So I'll say more analytical, more, all right, here's what we're going to do. Here's this, here's that. And then we've got Christy, who's, I'll say, far more empathic, far more, I'll say, relational. And I'll speak for myself. I'm super grateful to have her on the team, because those cognitive biases and blind spots that I would be susceptible to, I'd have no way to remedy those unless were it not for Miss Christy Cook. So all of that said, I'll let her introduce herself and speak to what brought her to Warriors Ascent. So Christy, great to have you.
Thank you. So when I'm a military spouse, and we moved to the Kansas City area in 2019. I was working on my master's program in nonprofit administration. And while I thought I had a great nonprofit management resume when I moved to Kansas City, I realized very quickly that Kansas City is a small, big town. So I was struggling to get into the nonprofit world. But while I was working on graduate studies, I needed to do a grant for a nonprofit that I wasn't working for. So I had reached out to Warriors Ascent. And as soon as I met you, I knew that I was the yin to your yang. I wasn't that quite certain at first, but
destined for greatness.
I knew that I felt that I could bring something to the organization. And so it took a couple months and a couple meetings. And so since January of 2000, I've been part of the organization.
Dun, dun. Matt?
Well, that's pretty good for us, So
we are the beneficiaries of
when
that.
you come to Warriors Ascent, we talked with Tammy last time, and you have some impact with Tammy. I sort of knew about Mike because he had worked with the therapist I was using, over by Kansas State, and but I didn't know anything about Christy until you get there, and then Christy becomes a big part of the cohort you're in, and then the after is another part. And in particular, I bugged her to the point where I could be on committees and different things, and so that I could go and be a part of the celebration dinner and different events that we've had and volunteer. So, but Christy's been integral into helping me be a part of the team. And I've been able to watch what she does, which is there's a lot of work behind the scenes to keep this, organization going and having these cohorts ready when they're there. So it's a lot of work.
So what I love about Christy is a good blend of competence. It's one thing to be empathic or a cheerleader and all of that and not have your stuff together, and I'm going to say I've got little tolerance for that, but I've got very little tolerance for that. What's great about Christy is she brings that empathy, meeting people where they're at, all of that. I'll say that the softer side, but exceedingly competent in terms of, executing projects, all of that, to where you can say, hey, can you get this done? She's like, oh, absolutely. In terms of being a self-starter, all of that, and with the background in the special forces, there's not much hand holding going on. And we used to say big boy rules, right? So big girl rules, but the ability to give some basic guidance and say, hey, here are the operational parameters, go and make magic happen. And Miss Christy makes magic happen.
That's right.
So that's what I love about her. So getting the right people on the bus, as we'd mentioned before, absolutely. So I'm super grateful. But as I opened up with, what's nice is not only getting somebody that you feel has got the right ideological alignment. They're doing things for the right reasons. They're not self-serving. They want to help, they want to make the organization better and help people. And you realize, now this person's doing things for the right reasons.
Yeah.
That's, that's super important. But there's something to be said about, diversifying how it is that you, think about things. If you are in nothing but an echo chamber with people who think exactly like you. And like I said, that alignment's important. You don't want, what is it, orthogonal, right? Where people are just kind of at odds with one another. That makes for a lot of friction and unrest. But when you've got agreement and alignment in some capacity where, all right, we're unified in that regard. But at the same time, you've got somebody that can bring different perspectives to make the organization better, or myself as an individual better. I know Miss Christie's always like, you need to write thank you notes. You need to, and I'm like, no, I know it's the right thing to do. It's not my, but in the end, that relational aspects being pushed outside of your comfort zone, things that I'd otherwise be like, got other things. It's like that. I think I'll say on a personal level, I'm grateful for, but organizationally, we benefit from.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm going to hand it back to Christy. So what, so you worked with the Red Cross, I know. So you've got a background. You teed up, what brought you to Warriors Ascent, I think, mostly. What is it that you like about our organization? What's appealing? Why did you stick with us for 4 years?
I know, 4 years in January.
Yes.
Well, as a military spouse, my early career was spent in Catholic education because it was a great mom job. And when my husband would deploy, I wouldn't work. And it was easy to be in the classroom or be a mom and kind of go back and forth. I hadn't really thought about a career in nonprofit until I was offered an opportunity at an inner city mission school in North Omaha. And that was my first experience being a community advocate and a fundraiser, besides just doing event-based fundraising. I had done auctions and dances and all of the things associated with Catholic education and fundraising there, but I had never done development that wasn't just event-based. From there, I went to Alaska, where I was the Service to Armed Forces manager for the American Red Cross. And that was my first time working and supporting military and veterans. And so it was at that time when I was deciding, do I go back to school in administration for education, or do I follow this new opportunity to focus on nonprofit management? And I fell in love with being an advocate for veterans and active duty in Alaska. One of the perks of the job was I got to travel all over the place and work with the Guard, and the reserves and the veterans all across the state. Got to do some traveling that I wouldn't have done just as a military spouse. But when we got to Kansas City, I knew that I had continued on the career path, that I was going to, stay in the nonprofit world. So with Warriors Ascent, one of the things that I researched before I started was that the fundraising events were limited. We weren't going to do a car wash 1 month and a bake sale 1 month and, stand on the street corner and collect pennies kind of thing, because I'm very passionate about relationships. And so I knew that it was going to be a good fit for me, and that I love event planning, but I wanted to bring more to the organization than just event planning. I wanted to help build the relationships within the community. And so as the operations director, most of my role has to do with development. And I'll never forget Matt. So one of the roles that I have with our celebration dinner in November every year is finding alumni to come back and speak. And Matt was standing by himself during the retreat. What month did you come?
May.
Okay, so May, I'm looking forward to that November, right? And I haven't secured an alumni to speak yet. And Matt was standing out on the balcony, and I knew, based on your look, your story, I may be a little bit biased towards helicopter pilots because my daddy was a Black Hawk pilot. But I just had a feeling that it was going to be a good fit. And so I went outside on the balcony and I approached you.
That's
and
right.
I said, hey, you haven't even finished the program yet, but I want to talk with you about the opportunity to share your story at our celebration dinner every year, or in November. And your posture changed. You immediately went from just a participant to bought in to after you left, and you hadn't even left yet. It was immediate. And I was so thankful that I followed my instinct to step outside that day and have that conversation with you, because now you're on the board, you're doing a podcast, you're part of our Warriors Ascent family, bigger than just an alumni.
Well, I'm glad you did too, because that exactly is how I remember that story as well. Thinking, how would you ask me to do this? I've never, I'm not even a graduate, but it gave me this thing I needed to do, and I needed to earn it, and I had some time to go before that. So there was a lot of ups and downs to get to that night, and so, but you had me with the organization that whole trip. I was on all the golf tournaments and everything. So it was really changed me being involved with Warriors Ascent. So I really appreciate that. One of the things I was going to ask you, and it's the same with Tammy, is that you guys, both of you two, are so fit for your jobs, and you're both military spouses. And I wonder, you think there's a connection there?
Perhaps. So when I was 16, on my 16th birthday, we were living in Izmir, Turkey. My mom said something about, well, when you're a mom, you'll understand. And I was like, no, I'm never marrying a soldier, and I'm never having kiddos. I've been married to my soldier for 25 years now. Not only did I have 2 kiddos, I was a Catholic educator, which I never thought that I would be a teacher. I went to school in business administration. I was going to wear sexy business suits and be an international businesswoman and travel the world. And different plans. I know that who I am is because of my experience as a military kiddo growing up. And my identity and my role in Warriors Ascent is just organic. It's who I am. So I don't ever feel like I have to put on a hat that I'm not comfortable with, unless Mike is asking me to be on a podcast. But it's just, for me, it's just the perfect fit. And I believe that not just in Kansas City, but across the nation, the respect and support for veterans and first responders is continuing to build momentum, and the recognition that we have to meet them where they are. We have to offer them the services that they need. And what we do at Warriors Ascent is the perfect fit for, I would say, 80% of anybody who's struggling. And whether it's struggling low key, like I'm just not feeling good, or I'm not making connections like I used to, or I'm drinking too much, or I'm not sleeping so good, to the people who are like, no, I'm ready to end this. And everything in between, like my experience, both as a military brat and a military spouse, and my life experiences with my opportunities with my employment before I came here just kind of set me up for where I am.
Yeah. Yeah. To our benefit.
No, absolutely. So, when we talked in the previous episode about Jim Collins, get the right people on the bus and in the right seats, I would say Ms. Christy's on the right bus and in the right seat, most definitely. And just, again, the relational thing, anecdote that you brought up, her ability to see, hey, I need to engage this guy. I mean, that's a skill, no doubt. I relate to you simply because, you said Brianna sent me your way, and I was like, oh, and, I had an inkling of your background, and I'm like, well, I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
But,
and we say that, but and we look at where people come from, and they come from all over the place, and they hear from us, maybe just doing a Google search. So that's effective too. I mean, I didn't get special treatment or anything, but I just got, this place was a fit. The timing was unbelievable for me, and it doesn't work that way for everybody, where it could be several months before you can get in a course or be on a waiting list for just a little bit. And, that could be tough. My experience was completely different. So we're doing what we can. And I recognize that. And I think this whole team here is doing what they can to make that time between committing to coming and actually showing up bearable, and that likelihood of there being a better ratio of people actually showing up. So this team right here does that like all the time. And it's an all day job.
Now, what I liked about that story is, Tammy, when you had rostered, I think we were pretty much at max capacity. But again, this is what I mean about judgment, getting the right people, versus somebody that's like, well, we're at max capacity. There's nothing I can do. I can't do. She's just like, man, I hear your story. I can sense where you're at. We'll get you rostered. And I love Tammy because she's always very deferential, like, hey, I'm going to do this, is that, which I appreciate. But she's got sound judgment in that, hey, let's make this call. Let me advocate for this guy and say, hey, I really think we should get this guy in just by virtue of his story, where he's at. And again, like Christy, that takes a sense. It's not just check. It's let me feel where this person's at, which is very important. Yeah. So Christy, in your role as operations director, you've got your fingers in many, many things. So clearly the fundraising aspect and events, but 2IC or second in charge for you non-military types. But you're privy to so many things. The programmatic, as you mentioned, the fundraising. We try for the high payoff targets, right? Not the big sales and all that stuff, which is good. I mean, it allows us to do our job better. And as you pointed out, they're high impact events, the marketing, the variety of things. But I'll say programmatically, what is it about our organization, how it is that we do it, that appeals to you? I mean, it'd be one thing, it's a nonprofit and I can do what I like, but I in the conversations I've had with you, it's clearly more than just that. So what is it about the program and organization writ large that you think is particularly appealing to you?
Well, I've always had an interest in holistic health. And I often say, if I had an opportunity to do school over again, I would probably major in functional medicine. I thought I wanted to be a physical therapist, and after taking college biology, I was like, oh yeah, never mind. But the holistic nature for sure was one of the biggest ones. I had never done yoga on a regular basis before Warriors Ascent, and that was the first personal thing that I implemented. Last year in 2023, I did yoga 360 days of the year. Like, I barely missed. I mean, it's absolutely become part of who I am. And it doesn't matter what it looks like. I don't go to a yoga studio most of the time. I do yoga with Adrienne at home, or Carrie's yoga, or, whatever I want on TV. But for me, the mind and body connection has been extremely impactful personally. And then, the little tidbits of information that I get throughout the week from our providers, from our participants, I share with both my husband and my dad and anybody else who will listen. Even my kiddos listen to, best practices from Warriors Ascend. Definitely the whole person piece. Obviously, I love healthy eating. I believe in that. I believe that food can cure you. I've experienced that firsthand in my life. So I love what we bring to the table with that. Yeah. So the whole person piece is for sure it.
The holistic nature.
Yeah.
The multimodal.
Yeah.
The multimodal nature.
Well, and so I started in January and I didn't really know what to expect. I saw the website and I believed in the mission, but I didn't know what to expect when I went to my first retreat. And I just kind of was there observing for the most part. And there was a gentleman who came through the program, and when we did the ceremony for loss, and he read his letter to his dad that had committed suicide when he was 11. And this gentleman was in his early 60s. And he said, if I had been a better son, my dad wouldn't have committed suicide. And the fact that this gentleman had been carrying that for over 50 years, and we had the opportunity to change the second or the last third of his life because of him being able to let go. Like, I remember leaving that day thinking, one, my life was never going to be the same. And two, I was exactly where I was supposed to be.
It's amazing. And you see these things repeated over and over, throughout the weeks. You guys see it and attend those ceremonies, So, once you've seen that, like just one anecdote like that is enough to, give you some desire to impact the community. So,
yeah. And now we're getting into multi-generational impact. We've got Tasha and John that came through, and then their daughter's been through the program, and for sure their grandkids and their daughter's kids and nieces and nephews are receiving the impact of what they learned with us. Like it's a, Warriors Ascent and our practices are who their whole family is, which I think is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get that a lot, some of the testimonials that we'll do just to kind of hear in their own words how the program helped them. Again, not to be self-aggrandizing, like, oh, we're so awesome. But in their own words, what is it that they got from the program? And what's interesting is for some, you'll hear, as you pointed out, hey, it's helped me. I'm back on track. I've got I'm not going to say a new lease on life, but, whatever. There are others that, and you hear it recurringly, they're like, my family has noticed a difference. My kids, my kids have seen it. My kids have talked to their friends, and their parents have noticed a difference. Again, never to oversell it, and be all salesy, but you see that when you impact that one life, in a positive way like that, and again, not with meds, not with something like that, not disparaging that. Hey, if you need it, you need it, but it's kind of like a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle and a mindset, and certainly there are practices, self-care practices, and we've talked about the metacognitive. But beyond that, really, quite frankly, what we've not really touched upon that much is it's like a lifestyle. It's a mindset. It's a way of living. And
that's exactly it.
And, we talk about Kerry. We were looking, when we talked about him in a previous episode where he just, our yoga guy, and he just exudes that. Like, he's somebody that you want to be around. So when we talk about community and your 5 people and all of that, kind of bringing it back to that, he's one of those guys because he lives the life. He doesn't preach one thing and then do something else. And he's a guy dealing with significant, health issues by virtue of, I think his service in the Gulf War and a variety of things. He's a guy that, quite frankly, with the things that he's dealing with, could easily be, my life sucks, I'm miserable, and just be cranky all the time. But he's not. Because
he's the guy that broke it into me that, like, I'm thinking, I'm not touching my toes. I'm not doing yoga. I'm not going to fight anybody, but I'm going to sit in here and I'm just going to kindly not participate. And, he instantly makes you want to try. And it's like, we're not going to judge you. And so I look over the guy next to me he couldn't even see his toes, let alone touch them. So I'm thinking, yeah. So I'm like getting to my knees, that's pretty good. And so it just, like you said, there's this welcoming, and he always invites you to do it. Hey, I invite you to do this with us. And, it's like, there's just this different feeling when that's involved, and it's your decision, And then this program is here for everybody. And that 5 days, you're walking out of there with a high because you go, wow, I just got this tiger by the tail. But here's the thing, and Tammy alluded to it, and you know it too, and Mike, you know it, that it's a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And so like 5 weeks later, 6 weeks later, man, I still have to grind this. I still have to like write out journaling, like what my intentions are for tomorrow. That's right. Yep. And then eventually, like, this is stuff like your yoga 360 days. That's pretty impressive, by the way. Thanks. That's pretty awesome.
I mean, it's not all like handstands and crows.
No, I get it. But still, you're, like, it's like exercise, and I don't want to do it today, but dang it, I'm going to do it anyway. And then you're always thinking to yourself, wow, I'm so glad I did that, And it's just a matter of like doing it and just doing it. And then you'll find it. People say this doesn't work. Tried it 1 time, 2 times, and didn't do it again. So, well, this just didn't work for me. And we know it's that persistent, consistent, nonstop.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people leave our program, with an adjusted identity, with this new sense of, 1, community, which we talk about a lot, but 2, their value. And Tammy sets that up, and she said it earlier in her podcast about you deserve to be here. She gives you value before you even walk through the door. And then we keep that momentum going all week. And we're blessed beyond measure with our providers. Yeah. And not just that, but like the work that you've done, Mike, with the sequencing of the week. It works because of your efforts that you put into it to make each day impactful and to build on top of each other so that on Friday, when we have our graduation, people are ready.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff I'd say, but there's some secretive stuff that's worth finding out when you're there.
Just come to the program.
Yeah.
The program.
No, but you talk about worthiness, right? So that was one of the things with Brene Brown is what's the difference between, people that are doing well, versus suffering. And it's, this sense of worthiness, being worthy of love. And that's important. And I think to your point, when we talk about community and all of that, it's this, I'll say, mutual belief that, hey, everyone has value. Carrie will say, everyone has their own gifts and talents, and things of that nature, and everyone's worthy of, respect and love. No, that's important. And as you've pointed out, people will come to us, without, airing tons of bad stuff, but many will come to us and share stories of people or parents or caregivers or spouses or whomever that have, made them feel otherwise, and they've lived like that, feeling that burden, which is tough. And I think if nothing else, and we throw a lot at them, and I think they derive a lot of benefit from what it is that, we teach. But if nothing else, if they just come away with a sense of worthiness and belonging, that has, that's effective in and of itself.
It's a big one, yeah.
Yeah. So in closing, Christy, what, any takeaways, because we always, with this podcast, we always want people to take away something actionable, a little tidbit that they can say, oh, hey, I'll use that.
Oh, goodness. That's putting me on the spot. We have some events coming up. We'd love anybody in the Kansas City community or anywhere in the country to support us. On March 29th, we have our second Sporting Clays Classic out at Powder Creek in Lenexa. It's going to be a ton of fun. Emily Rasmussen is our celebrity shooter again.
Nice.
She's an amazing young lady. June 29th, our 10th Team Leadville run. July 12th, our Friends of Special Operations Golf Scramble at Fort Leavenworth. And November 8th will be our annual celebration dinner. And all of this information is on our website. So if you want to be a sponsor, you want to attend, you want more information, as each of those events approach, you'll be able to get registration and sponsorship information on the website.
Excellent. And
I think Chrissy just took my job.
No, and just as important is the sense of community that you'll see when coming to those events. So beyond the fundraising, which is very important to us clearly, what we are always trying to, I'll say, give people a sense of is the community by bringing, alum with us, and not even just alum, but supporters, donors, funders that feel strongly about our mission, our cause, our organization, and are supporting us. So that overall sense of community is very important, not only from a therapeutic standpoint, but just from, I'll say, an organizational standpoint as well. All right. So thanks everyone for
joining us,
Christy. Booyah. Appreciate you. Glad to have you on board, and we will see you next time.
Hi, Matt Hastings here, sending a thank you for watching this episode of the Warriors Ascent podcast. We strive to build a community of warriors made up of our nation's veterans and first responders. And to reach as many of those in need as possible, we need your help. Please just smash that like button and comment or share our content. Warriors Ascent is a Kansas City-based nonprofit that aids veterans and first responders with PTS. I went through this effective program and want those that are struggling to find what I found. Check us out on our website at warriorsascent.org.